time for a home entertainment upgrade. As an Apple user, I of course gravitated towards Apple's offerings. So I got myself the new 2021 Apple TV 4K and 2 HomePod Minis. Should you follow my lead? Let's talk about it. Here's how today's video is going to go. First, we will quickly run through the HomePod and Apple TV setup processes. Then, I will give my thoughts on each of Apple's bullet points along with some other key points. Finally, we will end with my final thoughts on this duo. So, let's get into it. Setting up the HomePod Mini and Apple TV is so uniquely Apple. Power up the HomePod using the included 20-watt USB-C power adapter and attached USB Type-C cable, then wait for it to start up. Now tap your iPhone on the speaker and you will get a little card that pops up at the bottom of the screen that will direct you through the setup process. You will start by adding the HomePod to HomeKit, aka the Home app, by assigning it to a room in your house. Then they give you some information on how the HomePod can recognize the different voices of everyone in your home. Up next, confirm you want to use your Apple ID account to configure the HomePod. Lastly, hover your phone camera over the top of the HomePod and just like that, the HomePod will configure itself. The second HomePod has a similar setup. However, I want to set up these speakers in a stereo pair. So when I add my second speaker to the same room, I get asked that exact question. Saying yes will automatically configure this HomePod Mini with the same settings as the first one and then pair them as a left and right speaker. With the HomePod set up, it's time to switch gears and take a look at the Apple TV. So, I plug in the power cable into the wall and the HDMI cable purchased separately into the TV. After booting up, it's time to travel through the wizard, choosing my region and location. Once again, the Apple TV setup asks if I want to use my iPhone to finish faster. Well, of course. So once again, I tap my iPhone on the Apple TV and a card appears where I can finish the setup process. The setup process of each of these devices is so simple. There's no connecting to Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, no signing into accounts or repeating yourself. Just tap your iPhone, click yes, and you're done. Now, let's discuss Apple's bullet points for each of these products, starting with the HomePod Minis. When you go to Apple's website for the HomePod Mini, you are immediately greeted by some short statements. First of all, it has room-filling sound. This statement needs an asterisk. There is a limit to the size of the room the HomePod Mini can fill. More on that later. Next, the HomePod Mini has an intelligent assistant. Sure, Siri's come a long ways, but I wouldn't refer to her as intelligent. I find she still struggles to follow basic commands, and personally, I don't use voice assistants all that often. Next, it can control your smart home. Yes, it can, if you pay the premium for HomeKit-enabled smart devices. Hopefully that will all change with the release of the Matter standard coming later this year. You can learn more about that in the link below. The HomePod, like the Apple TV, can also serve as a home hub. This makes your HomePod act as a router for all of your HomeKit devices. So if you want to change the temperature on your HomeKit thermostat while you're on the go, your iPhone will connect to the HomePod and the HomePod will send your request to the thermostat. This keeps all of your smart devices from having to communicate with cloud services and talk through the internet directly. The HomePod is being marketed as private and secure. This is something I can also confirm. Apple advertises that it works in the best interest of its users' privacy with features like on-device processing and end-to-end encryption. For example, if you have a HomeKit secure video camera, the HomePod will manage the image processing such as facial recognition and package detection. The next feature is the continuity between all of your HomePods. Features like Intercom let you make an announcement to all of your HomePods at one time. You can stream audio to all of your HomePods at once, or you can tell Siri to send audio from one speaker to another. But really, the highlight feature of the HomePod is how simple it is to control your speakers from your Apple devices. AirPlay 2 compatibility makes sending your audio from your Apple device to these speakers so much easier without having to deal with Bluetooth. Or if you have an iPhone with a U1 chip like an iPhone 12, you can tap your iPhone on the speaker to send whatever you're listening to that speaker. I think that's all from the HomePod. Now let's look at why Apple wants you to go with an Apple TV 4K. First, the Apple TV 4K is for a higher definition of TV, meaning 4K like most new TVs sold these days. So the Apple TV can support all of the latest media standards with 4K high frame rate HDR for fluid crisp video. AKA, the Apple TV will output the content in the highest quality supported by the content itself and your TV. All of this is made possible by the A12 Bionic chip that powered the iPhone XS in 2018. You may think that's a little old, however the Apple TV doesn't need that much power and it's still an upgrade from the iPhone 7's A10 that shipped with the previous Apple TV 4K. I don't want to go too far into the features of tvOS because I want to make a more detailed video on that subject, so here are the basics. You can AirPlay content to your Apple TV from your iPhone, iPad, and Mac. You can pair your AirPods or Beats to listen to the TV through your headphones. You can create multiple users, and there's a large app store. The highlight feature of this Apple TV is the much needed updated remote. Let's look at the previous Apple TV remote for reference. It's a black piece of glass, as thin as a couple sheets of paper, and as slippery as a bar of soap. Set it down in the dark while you're watching a movie, and it will find a way to slither its way into the couch. Not to mention, when you're in the dark or just not paying attention, you can't tell which side's the top since they're both covered in a glossy glass. They tried circling the menu button in white, but that didn't do any good. And lastly, the touchpad was so imprecise and provided no alternative. This remote, on the other hand, is an improvement from every angle. It's like silver and thicker, which makes it harder to lose. It would have been nice to see integration with the Find My network so you can ping it and quickly know which couch it's in. So for now, it looks like you'll need to attach an AirTag if you want to use those features. The buttons also get refreshed. There's a dedicated power button that can turn on and off both your Apple TV and supported TV. Also, there's a mute button to go along with the volume buttons. The menu button has been replaced with a more fitting back button, and the Siri button has been moved to the side following the design language of the iPhone. Lastly, the trackpad has been replaced with a D-pad for more precise movements. However, you can still use the D-pad as a touchpad. Then, if you prefer using one or the other instead of both, you can make that change in settings. Now, I want to turn our attention to the bottom of the remote where you'll find the lightning port used to recharge the remote. Annoyingly, it's not USB Type-C, but what can you do? I was also thinking it would be cool if you could plug in a pair of headphones into the remote and listen to your TV. However, the Apple TV remote doesn't support this. I also want to touch on the two screws on either side of the lightning port. You see, the previous Apple TV remote was glued together, making getting to the battery so much harder. So when the battery failed in my old remote, it immediately became useless. The screws on the new remote allow you to slide out the internals and replace the battery if needed. That upgradability is a huge pro. So that's my setup. And what do I think of it? Well, the Apple TV is great. As you can tell, I'm loving the new remote and I feel at home with tvOS. Would I recommend it to someone else? That's a tough one. Starting at $179 for the 4K model is pretty expensive for what is essentially a streaming stick. They still have the HD model available for $149, but I'm not sure if I could recommend that either since it hasn't been updated since 2015, other than coming with a new remote. The Apple TV is also in this weird marketing place with Apple advertising it as a gaming console, especially since the release of Apple Arcade. However, I don't think that the gaming aspect is catching on. The Apple TV also lacks the exclusive features it used to have, with the Apple TV app now available on other streaming devices. Even AirPlay is built into most modern smart TVs. So unless you have the money lying around or you find one on sale, I would recommend going with a Roku. Just make sure you read the privacy policy beforehand. Get subscribed for more on that. Would I recommend the HomePod Mini? That is a hard no. If you look at all the features or the lack of them, you'll see what I mean. For one thing, Siri is not unique to the HomePod. If If I really wanted to use Siri, I could just as easily talk to my iPhone, iPad, Mac, Apple Watch, or Apple TV. I have enough devices with Siri built in. Besides, it's not like she can play music for me, an Amazon Music subscriber. The only music streaming service she works with is Apple Music. Not that that really matters because I prefer to pick out my own music. Then the tap your iPhone on your HomePod feature to AirPlay without changing settings on your device is more of a party trick. Hey, look what I can do. In practice, if I'm sitting on my couch, I'm not likely to get up and tap my phone on the HomePod to AirPlay. Not to mention, that feature only works with the iPhone 12 and newer, presumably. Also, in my current arrangement, AirPlay isn't a necessity. Besides, my original intention was to set up my pair of HomePod Minis as a default speaker for my Apple TV, but unfortunately, those features are reserved for the discontinued full-sized HomePod, which I'm not that upset about. When I did pair the Minis to the Apple TV to watch a movie, they didn't do all that great. The soundtrack sounded good, but all the voices seemed pretty muffled. They also didn't get as loud as I had hoped. For instance, I have what I would think of as a medium-sized living room. I found the stereo paired of HomePod Minis to be a bit too quiet, even at half volume. I had to crank it to at least 75% to be what I would think of as a normal listening volume. And at that point, things really get distorted. I see the HomePod Mini as a bedroom speaker for an Apple Music subscriber. Long term, I could just as easily get a better soundbar and AirPlay my content to the Apple TV when needed. I knew what I was getting into when I purchased the Apple TV, and I loved the experience. The HomePod Minis, on the other hand, I was hoping for more. However, it is a 3-inch tall ball, so how much could you really expect? That being said, the HomePods were fun to play with, but they were not the missing puzzle piece to my entertainment setup. So stay tuned for part 2, where we will learn if a $200 soundbar will be the missing puzzle piece. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when the next chapter is released. Also, like and comment on this video as it really helps the channel grow. Check out the links below in the description, along with links to our website, social media pages, and Patreon, where you can directly support the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.